Have you ever judged someone too quickly based on appearances? This story might make you think twice about the assumptions we make every day. By the end, I'll share how you can transform your own perspective on wealth, status, and what truly matters in human connections. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt of downtown community college's parking lot. Amara Johnson adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder, the leather still stiff and new against her carefully curated outfit. She had spent 2 hours that morning perfecting her appearance. Her clothes might not have the highest price tags, but she had mastered the art of looking expensive on a receptionist's salary. Appearances mattered in Amara's world. They were currency, power, and protection all wrapped into one carefully maintained facade. Her father's bankruptcy when she was 15 had taught her that painful lesson. She'd watched as family friends disappeared once the money dried up, how quickly respect evaporated when their address changed from the gated community to the apartment complex across town. Never let them see you struggle, her mother had whispered one night as they packed their belongings into borrowed boxes. Those words had become Amara's mantra, the foundation upon which she'd built her adult life. The parking lot was nearly full when Amara arrived for her evening business administration class. She circled twice before finding a space next to what appeared to be an automotive relic, a faded blue 1992 Toyota Corolla with patches of rust blooming across its hood like some strange metal disease. One of the windows was replaced with plastic sheeting, held in place with duct tape. Good Lord, Amara muttered to herself, carefully opening her car door to avoid touching the decrepit vehicle. She took a quick photo with her phone and tapped out a message to her best friend. Check out my new neighbor. Think I need a tetanus shot just for parking next to it. She added 3 laughing emojis before hitting send. As she gathered her textbooks, she heard the unmistakable sound of keys jingling nearby. Glancing up, she saw a man approaching the rusty Corolla. He was tall with broad shoulders, wearing worn jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that had seen better days. His work boots were scuffed, and his hands looked calloused, a working man's hands. Despite his humble appearance, there was something striking about him, a quiet confidence in his walk, a steadiness in his gaze. Their eyes met briefly, and Amara quickly looked away, suddenly aware that he might have witnessed her mocking his car. Heat rose to her cheeks as she fumbled with her belongings, dropping her expensive pen onto the pavement. Before she could bend down, the man had already retrieved it. I believe this is yours, he said, his voice deeper than she expected, with a warmth that contrasted with the coolness in his eyes. Thank you, Amara said, taking the pen without meeting his gaze. She forced a polite smile and turned toward the college building. Nice car, he called after her, nodding toward her leased BMW. Payments must be steep. Amara froze, feeling the sting of his perception. How did he know it was leased? She maintained the fiction of ownership carefully, even among friends. Some people value different things, she replied with practiced poise. Some of us prefer not to drive tetanus hazards. The moment the words left her mouth, regret followed. It wasn't like her to be openly cruel, but something about being seen through had triggered her defenses. To her surprise, the man laughed, a genuine, rich sound that carried across the parking lot. Fair enough, he said. I'm Marcus, by the way. We're in the same business ethics class. Amara searched his face, trying to place him. Had he been sitting in the back all this time? She prided herself on knowing everyone who mattered. Amara, she offered curtly, extending her hand automatically, the way she'd been trained to do at networking events. His handshake was firm but gentle, and she noticed a watch on his wrist that seemed incongruent with the rest of his appearance. Not flashy, but certainly high quality. An heirloom, perhaps? Maybe we could study together sometime, Marcus suggested. I've been having trouble with Professor Wilson's conceptual frameworks. Amara hesitated. Study groups were strategic for her. Connections with the right people, potential job leads, professional networking. What could this man with the rusted car possibly offer? I'm pretty busy, she said, the polite brush-off practiced and perfect. Marcus nodded, seemingly unsurprised. No pressure. Just thought I'd ask. You're top of the class, after all. Pride flickered across Amara's face before she could suppress it. You noticed? Hard not to. Your insights on ethical leadership last week were spot on. For a moment, something genuine passed between them. Recognition, perhaps respect, before Mara's walls reassembled themselves. "I should get to class," she said, checking her watch. "Don't want to be late." As she walked away, she felt Marcus's eyes on her back, and something uncomfortable twisted in her stomach. Judgment? No. Something worse, understanding, as if he had seen something in her that she worked hard to keep hidden. In class, Amara found herself distracted, her eyes repeatedly drifting to where Marcus sat in the back corner, taking notes in a tattered notebook. Professor Wilson was discussing the ethics of wealth display, and the irony wasn't lost on her. "The signaling of wealth," the professor was saying, "often serves psychological needs beyond practical ones. We conflate external markers of success with internal worth." Amara shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The parking lot encounter replayed in her mind, her smugness, his quiet dignity. She had crafted her entire world around the very behavior Professor Wilson was now dismantling with academic precision. After class, Amara lingered, organizing her notes with unnecessary thoroughness as the lecture hall emptied. She had noticed Marcus speaking with Professor Wilson and felt a strange urge to delay her departure, perhaps to apologize, or simply to satisfy her curiosity about this man who seemed so comfortable in his contradictions. But when she finally stepped outside, the parking lot had transformed. A sleek helicopter had landed in the adjacent field, its blades still spinning lazily. A small crowd had gathered, phones raised to capture the unexpected visitor. And there, walking calmly toward the helicopter, was Marcus. Amara stood frozen, her textbooks clutched against her chest as the rotor wash from the helicopter sent her carefully styled hair whipping across her face. The small crowd that had gathered whispered excitedly, their phones raised to capture the scene. And there, striding confidently toward the waiting aircraft, was Marcus, the man whose car she had ridiculed just hours before. A tall woman in a tailored suit greeted him with a tablet in hand, leaning in to speak over the noise of the rotors. Marcus nodded, reviewing whatever she showed him before climbing aboard with practiced ease. He paused at the door, scanning the parking lot. For a brief moment, his eyes locked with Amara's. There was no smugness in his expression, no vindication. Just a simple nod of acknowledgement before he disappeared inside. The helicopter lifted gracefully into the evening sky, leaving Amara standing in a cloud of dust and confusion. Around her, students were already creating social media posts, their voices animated with speculation. "That's Marcus Reeves," she overheard a young man saying to his friend. "The CEO of Reeve Tech. My brother interned there last summer. Said Reeves sometimes flies in to teach guest lectures on sustainable business practices." "Reeve Tech?" Another student questioned. "The renewable energy company that just landed that billion-dollar international contract?" Amara's mind raced, connecting scattered pieces of information. Reeve Tech had been featured in her business innovation textbook, a case study in ethical entrepreneurship and community investment. The company had transformed an economically devastated region by establishing its headquarters in South River, her hometown, creating thousands of jobs and implementing progressive employment practices. The walk back to her car felt longer than usual. The rusty Toyota Corolla remained in its parking space, a stark contrast to the luxury of the helicopter that had just departed. Amara ran her fingers along the faded blue paint, noticing details she had missed before. A small stack of books on the passenger seat, a child's drawing taped to the dashboard, a humanitarian organization's parking permit in the window. The car wasn't abandoned or neglected. It was purposefully maintained, just enough to keep it functional. A choice, not a necessity. The realization settled uncomfortably in her stomach. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her apartment, a space she had furnished carefully to project success, though the credit card debt that made it possible weighed heavily on her monthly budget. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend responding to photos she'd sent earlier. "OMG, what a beater. Bet that guy lives in his parents' basement." The message made her cringe now. She opened her laptop and typed Marcus Reeves Reeve Tech into the search bar. The results were immediate and overwhelming. Marcus Reeves, 32, self-made billionaire. Forbes 30 under 30 alumnus. Pioneer in affordable renewable energy technology. Philanthropist. And they're in a recent interview. I drive a '92 Corolla that belonged to my grandfather. It reminds me daily of where I came from and what matters most. Further down the page, a quote from a Reeve Tech employee. Mr. Reeves doesn't believe in status symbols. He invests in people, not appearances. Amara closed her laptop, her cheeks burning with shame. She thought of her own carefully constructed image. The designer clothes bought on installment plans, the luxury cars she could barely afford, the constant anxiety of maintaining appearances. What did it all amount to? Who was she trying to impress, and at what cost? The following morning, Amara arrived early for class, her usual meticulous appearance slightly softened. She'd opted for comfort over impression, and the relief of that small choice was surprising. The rusty Corolla was already in the parking lot, and she deliberately chose the space beside it again. Professor Wilson's lecture that day focused on authentic leadership and social responsibility in business. True leadership, he explained, comes not from position or power, but from alignment between values and actions. We live in a world obsessed with projecting success rather than creating meaningful impact. Amara took notes diligently, but her attention was divided. She kept glancing at Marcus, who sat engaged in the lecture, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated not just theoretical knowledge, but practical experience. After class, she gathered her courage and approached him as students filtered out of the room. "I owe you an apology," she said directly, meeting his eyes. "For yesterday in the parking lot." Marcus looked up from packing his worn backpack. "No apology necessary." "I judge you based on your car," Amara pressed on, needing to acknowledge her behavior. "I was superficial and unkind. And now you know I have a helicopter, so it's different?" His tone wasn't accusatory, but genuinely curious. The question struck Amara with unexpected force. Was that why she was apologizing? Because she now knew he was wealthy and powerful? The thought unsettled her. "That's fair," she conceded after a moment. "I'd like to think I'd apologize regardless, but maybe I wouldn't have realized I needed to." Her honesty surprised even herself. Marcus seemed to appreciate her candor. "We all make judgments. The question is whether we're willing to revise them." "I looked you up," Amar admitted. "Your company, what you've built, it's impressive." "It's meaningful work," he corrected gently. "That's different from impressive." Why the old car? The question had been bothering her all night. And why take business ethics classes when you could probably teach them? Marcus shouldered his backpack, gesturing toward the door as they began walking together. "The car was my grandfather's. He raised me after my parents died. He was a janitor at South River High School for 40 years. Never missed a day, never complained. Put me through college on a janitor's salary and his savings. That car represents everything important he taught me about dignity, work, and what matters." They reached the parking lot, stopping beside the faded Corolla. Up close, Amara could see it was immaculately maintained beneath the cosmetic wear. The interior clean, the engine likely in perfect condition. "As for the classes," Marcus continued, "I believe in continuous learning. Professor Wilson was my mentor when I was developing Reeve Tech's ethical framework. I audit his course every few years to stay grounded, to keep learning. The business world changes. The ethics shouldn't." Amara looked at her own leased BMW with new eyes. "I grew up in South River," she said quietly. "Before your company came, there was nothing there. My father lost everything in the mill closure." "I know," Marcus said simply. "Johnson Manufacturing. Your father was Thomas Johnson, mid-level manager. He was one of the few who spoke up about the unsafe conditions before the collapse." Amara stared at him, stunned. "How could you possibly know that?" "We researched everyone affected by the mill collapse when we chose South River for our headquarters. Your father showed integrity in a difficult situation. That's rare." "We lost everything," Amara whispered, years of carefully suppressed pain rising to the surface. "Our home, friends, status. Overnight, we became nobody." "Not nobody," Marcus corrected gently. "Just not defined by possessions anymore. There's a difference." The truth of his words resonated with something long buried within her. She'd spent years trying to reclaim what was lost. not understanding that what she was chasing wasn't worth having in the first place. "Your study offer," Amara said suddenly, remembering his invitation from the day before. "Is it still open?" Marcus smiled, fishing keys from his pocket. "Absolutely. Though full disclosure, I don't actually struggle with Wilson's frameworks. I just want to get to know the woman who asks the most insightful questions in class." For the first time in years, Amara felt seen, not for the image she projected, but for her mind, her potential, her true self. It was terrifying. It was liberating. "Coffee?" she suggested, gesturing toward the campus cafe. "I'd like to hear more about Reeve Tekka's work in South River." "I'd like that," Marcus replied. "But fair warning, I don't have the helicopter today. We might have to take the rusty death trap." Amara laughed, a genuine laugh that felt like shedding a heavy weight. "I think I can handle it. Maybe you'll even let me drive." The evening sunlight filtered through the windows of Reeve Tekka's Community Center in South River, casting a warm glow across the faces of eager high school students gathered for the company's mentorship program. Amara adjusted the projector as Marcus finished setting up chairs in a circle. It had been 6 months since their encounter in the college parking lot. 6 months that had completely transformed Amara's understanding of wealth, value, and her own worth. The transformation hadn't been instantaneous or easy. That first ride in Marcus's rusty Corolla had been just the beginning of a journey that forced Amara to confront deeply rooted beliefs about status and success. She'd spent years equating her value with external validation, sacrificing financial stability and authentic connections on the altar of appearances. "Ready?" Marcus asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. His presence still carried that same quiet confidence she'd noticed in the beginning, but now she understood its source. A profound alignment between his values and actions that no design or label could ever provide. "I'm nervous," Amara admitted, looking at the students who represented the future of South River. Many came from families like her own, hard-working people who had weathered economic devastation when the mill closed, who were now rebuilding their lives through opportunities created by Reeve Tekka's investment in the community. "They need to hear your story," Marcus encouraged, "especially from someone who understands exactly where they're coming from." Amara nodded, taking a deep breath before stepping forward to address the group. "My name is Amara Johnson," she began, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I grew up right here in South River. My father worked at the mill before it closed, and I learned some hard lessons about what happens when you build your identity around things that could be taken away." The students listened intently as Amara shared her journey. The family bankruptcy, the desperate attempts to maintain appearances, the crushing weight of pretending to be someone she wasn't. She spoke about meeting Marcus, about the rusty Corolla and the helicopter, about the moment she realized she'd been measuring success by all the wrong metrics. "I spent years trying to look successful instead of building something meaningful," she explained. "I was so focused on what others thought that I lost sight of who I actually was and what I could contribute." A young girl in the front row raised her hand. "But isn't it important to look professional? My mom says people judge you on appearances all the time." "They do," Amara acknowledged, "and there's value in presenting yourself well. But there's a difference between appropriate presentation and letting external appearances define your worth. The clothes you wear matter far less than the person you're becoming and the impact you have on others." From the back of the room, Marcus added, "True wealth isn't what you display. It's what you create and share." Reeve Tech didn't succeed because of impressive offices or luxury perks. We succeeded because we built something that matters, something that serves real needs. As the session continued, Amara guided the students through an exercise she developed for the mentorship program, identifying their genuine strengths and values separate from material possessions or status symbols. The energy in the room was palpable as students began recognizing their own intrinsic worth. Later, as they packed up materials after the students had left, Amara reflected on her own transformation. 3 months ago, she made the difficult decision to give up her expensive apartment and leased BMW, moving into a modest but comfortable home closer to South River. The financial relief had been immediate, but the emotional freedom had been even more profound. "You know what still amazes me?" she said to Marcus as they walked to the parking lot where his grandfather's Corolla waited faithfully. How much energy I spent trying to impress people I didn't even like or respect. That's how the cycle works, Marcus replied. We chase validation from people who are doing the exact same thing. Amara now worked as Reeve Tech's community outreach director, a position Marcus had offered not out of charity, but because her insight and lived experience made her uniquely qualified to connect the company with the community it served. She'd found purpose in helping rebuild the economy that had once devastated her family, work that aligned with her deepest values rather than superficial ambitions. The evening air was crisp as they drove through South River, passing the site where the abandoned mill once stood. In its place now rose Reeve Tech's Innovation Campus. Not a sterile corporate complex, but an integrated community space with educational facilities, affordable housing, and sustainable infrastructure. Remember when Professor Wilson talked about ethical wealth creation? Marcus asked as they passed the construction site. This is what it looks like in practice. Resources circulating within communities rather than being extracted from them. Amara nodded, thinking of her father who had recently joined Reeve Tech's board of advisors. His expertise in manufacturing processes and worker safety now valued rather than dismissed. The dignity restored to him was worth more than any status symbol she could have purchased. The students today, did you notice Eliza Carter? Her analysis of sustainable business models was remarkable. Amara observed. Her mother worked with your father at the mill, Marcus replied. She's applied for our scholarship program. I'd like to mentor her personally, Amara decided. She reminds me of myself at that age, smart-driven, but still defining success by the wrong metrics. They pulled into the driveway of Amara's new home, a modest but beautiful craftsman bungalow she was gradually restoring. Marcus's house, just 3 blocks away, was similarly understated despite his wealth. Both had chosen to live simply, investing instead in the community's revival. Inside, Amara kicked off her comfortable shoes and prepared tea in the kitchen filled with second-hand furniture chosen for character rather than prestige. On her refrigerator hung a photograph taken at Reeve Tech's community garden opening, Amara standing proudly with her parents, Marcus, and dozens of South River residents. Real connections, real impact, real wealth. I'm presenting the community reinvestment plan to the board next week, she said, handing Marcus a steaming mug. I've incorporated feedback from a neighborhood council about expanding the apprenticeship program. They'll approve it, Marcus said confidently. The data speaks for itself. Investing in people yields better returns than any other approach. As evening deepened into night, they reviewed curriculum plans for Reeve Tech's expanding education initiative. This was their routine now, purpose-driven work that extended beyond office hours because it didn't feel like obligation but opportunity. The following morning, Amara drove herself to the community center in her recently purchased used car, practical, reliable, and completely paid for. No more monthly payments stretching her budget. No more anxiety about maintaining appearances. The freedom of financial integrity had created space for genuine growth. She parked beside Marcus's faithful Corolla, smiling at the memory of her initial judgment. That rusty car had become a symbol of everything she now valued: authenticity, practicality, history, and the courage to define success on one's own terms. Inside the center, a new group of community members gathered for Reeve Tech's financial literacy workshop. Amara recognized many faces. Former mill workers, small business owners, young parents seeking better futures for their families. These were her neighbors, her community, her people. Welcome, she began with genuine warmth. Today we're discussing the difference between appearing wealthy and building actual financial security. As she spoke, Amara caught Marcus watching from the doorway, pride evident in his expression, not pride in possessions or power, but in purpose, in the profound impact of aligned values and actions. True wealth, Amara told the group, isn't about impressing others. It's about creating value, building community, and living authentically. It's about understanding that what you own matters far less than what you build and who you become in the process. An older man raised his hand. But isn't it easier for rich folks to talk about not caring about money? Some of us are just trying to survive. That's an important point, Amara acknowledged. Economic inequality is real, and basic security matters. But regardless of where we start, We all face the same fundamental choice about how we measure our worth and success. She shared her own story once more, not as a neat morality tale, but as a complex human journey of misplaced values and gradual awakening. The workshop evolved into a community dialogue about South River's history and future, about collective resilience and individual dignity. Later, as participants networked over coffee, Marcus joined Amara near the window overlooking the town square that Reeve Tech had helped revitalize. I got a call from the investment firm again. He mentioned quietly, they're still pushing for a more prestigious corporate headquarters to reflect our market position. Amara laughed. What did you tell them? That our best reflection of success is a thriving community around us, not a glass tower with our name on it, he replied. Some people will never understand that true wealth isn't what you display. It's what you create that outlasts you. As the sun set over South River, Amara reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a moment of judgment in a college parking lot. She had once mistaken symbols of success for success itself, appearance for substance, possession for worth. Now she understood that authentic wealth came not from accumulation, but from alignment, from building a life and community that reflected your deepest values. The rusty Corolla still sat in the parking lot, a humble reminder that what carries you forward isn't always what shines the brightest. Sometimes, the most valuable things are those that remain faithful through time, that connect us to what matters most, that serve a purpose beyond appearance. And in that understanding, Amara had found something far more precious than status. She had found herself. Remember, appearances can be deceiving, and true value often lies beneath the surface. The next time you find yourself making snap judgments based on external signs of status or success, pause and consider what might be missing from your perspective. Real wealth isn't measured in possessions, but in purpose, connection, and the courage to live authentically. How might your own life change if you began measuring success not by what you can display, but by the impact you create?